Well, hello. I'm gonna go ahead and record a tutorial here because I told myself I would record one every week. Alright, so today is going to be a tutorial on events. So we're gonna call this Unity Events Tutorial. Again, I'm gonna find my D, Unity, Tutorials, Events directory. Now, for those of you who don't know what events are a a great way to hook one object into another. So oftentimes you need one object to respond to another. Whatever action is happening on one object, you want another object to listen to that action or event. So let's say you had two objects, for example, actually it's easier to get up and running with the UI system. So I'll go ahead and add two UI image elements. I'll just set them, and you can do this with 3D objects as well. I'm just doing this because it's easier to get set up with these 2D objects. I'm going to go ahead and I'll place one. Let's go ahead and hit F. We'll zoom into F's position. Zoom out a little bit. So F, and then this guy will just move over a little bit. So we'll say that one of these is a green object. And for whatever reason, anytime you click on the green object, you want the red object to change colors to green momentarily, maybe for a couple seconds. So we'll just say that this one is the target object, and this one is the event object. So we've got these two objects, and maybe in gaming terms, this is that you click on your RTS soldier and you select a move or something, and then the dialogue system needs to know that you selected a target position, so the dialogue needs to update and show that you've selected a target position, or that even you've just selected your unit and the dialogue system shows information about the unit. So I'll go ahead and, as usual, I'm going to create a folder called scripts. And in that folder, right now, I'm keeping this fairly simple, but in the future, you'd want to keep your directories a little more descriptive. Like you might have your model, view, controller folders. You might have a utility folder, but you basically want to keep your folders set up so that you're working with scripts that just affect views, or just describe the data models, or just describe how the views and the data models connect together through a controller. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and just call this click event. I can probably think of a better name. And I'm doing this off the cuff, so hopefully it'll be enough to get you started in connecting your objects, having them listen to each other. Now this, coupled with something like mediator system, gives you a lot of flexibility so that you can start kind of connecting all of your game objects, making them talk to each other or listen to certain events and actions throughout the game. Messenger systems are extremely critical to developing an architecture where objects from one system can listen to another. Events are also a good way to do that. Sometimes you need more than just events because you want a lot of different objects to listen that are maybe so many levels out of the hierarchy that you don't really want to pass them through your hierarchy. It can get really confusing that way. The downside to having messages is that you decouple your connections, so you don't see the connections visually in your hierarchy. You don't see how they're connected in your classes. All you know is that you send off a message and somebody somewhere is listening to that message. With events, you know that somebody is connected directly to the event. So anyways, in Unity, you can do this easily with just adding the using system class, creating a public, let's see if I can type here, public event, and action. Action is nice. We're going to say that this is the on-click handler. So I'm going to go ahead and use what's called an interface here. So again, I'm going to need to add another namespace here. This will be the event systems namespace. It's built into Unity. It was built in with the UGUI system so that you could connect or you could expand on Unity's built-in UI system or event system just in general. So here we go. We're going to add this interface which forces me to implement certain methods. I'm going to go ahead and add the down handler. And now I'm just going to get my cursor on it, control period, that drops down this helper box, which allows me to just implement this method quickly. So now that I've implemented this, I can debug log this object was clicked. And we can take a look and see that this object was clicked on any object that I dropped this script onto. So I'm going to grab my green object, I'm going to drop my click event on it, and I'm going to go ahead and hit play. And this is extremely critical that you learn this process of iteration. So you write your scripts, you kind of stub out your methods. Planning would be essential. In this case, I'm not doing it, but in future tutorials, I'll go through some planning processes. But so here we've got our green image element. I'm going to go ahead and click on it. You can say the object was clicked. You can see what line in the script if you double click on it in the console. And I'm going down here to the project console window. So I can see exactly what it was. You've got this event data argument that comes in. It provides a lot more information on the click, which is critical if you want to do interesting things. You can find the pointer position, the position there, the press position, the world position. So you can find all sorts of things, the click time, click count. I'm not get into that right now. I'm just trying to get into these events. So I have this on-click handler here. So I want to use the on-click handler. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to check if anybody is subscribed to the on-click handler, which is basically done by checking whether the on-click handler is not null. What that means is that when somebody subscribes, that on-click handler gets a delegate passed in, which basically means that somebody's method is passed into this event here, and it's stored. So everybody who passes their method in gets stored in this event handler, this on-click handler, and then when on-click handler fires off, it fires off to everybody who's hooked in. So that may not make much sense right now, but I'll show you an example, and I think it'll start making sense once you see the example. So now I'm checking whether the on-click handler is null. It's not. If it's not null, I want to go ahead and fire off this on-click handler. And right now I'm not sending off any data, so all I'm doing is firing off the on-click handler. So now we want somebody to listen to this. So I'm going to go ahead and add another script, and I'm going to just call this click listener. Go ahead and hit enter, open it up in Visual Studio, and I'm going to set a reference to this click event script. Clicked object, let's call it that, and I'll make it a serialize field right there. So on start, I basically want to hook up this on click handler to one of my own handlers. So handle clicked object. So now you can see I just made that up. It's giving me a red squiggly line. I can put my cursor on it, control period, and it's going to give me suggestions. Generate method click listener dot handle clicked object. I'm going to go ahead and hit enter. It'll implement this object or this method for me. And here I can do anything I want. Debug log, listen, and received click event. Okay, so I'm just going to do that right now again. Write some code, stub in some things, and then see the progress, iterate, and move on. So click listener. Drop this on the red image element, and you can see there is no slot for our object when there should be. So something is wrong with our script. Let's see here. Click event, serialize field. So for whatever reason, I see. Sometimes Visual Studio does this, where it opens a script, but it doesn't have, it doesn't understand that it's in our project. So I'm going to go ahead and reload this click listener script. There we go. Just make sure it's all in there. Okay, now I'm going to select this red guy, and you can see there's a slot for my clicked object. So now I can drop my event object in here. I can hit play, go to the console window. I'm going to click on the green one. So this object was clicked, was fired off from the green object. Listen and received click event happened from the red object. You can see I can do that over and over. And so that means right now that we do have a successful connection between these two objects. Anytime I click this guy fires off a method. So I can go in here just so we can visualize this a little better. I'll start a coroutine. Start coroutine. turn green, and I'll just make a, let's say 3 seconds as the argument. Now I can go ahead, you can see there's a red squiggly line. I'm going to go ahead and hit control period. It's going to offer to generate that method for me. Now coroutine, if you don't know what that is, this fires off a method that's similar to something like a thread. This will run over and over separately from the main UI thread. In every update cycle, it gives this thing time to run as if it's separate. But so this here, I can write my own while loops, and this will run while the update loop is also running. It's kind of nice. So here I'll go ahead and say get component image. Oh. You can see when I typed in image, it offered to fill it in with something else because it couldn't find image. I'm going to say color equals color dot green. So now what's happening here is that this image element is not recognized because I don't have the namespace for it set up. So I'm going to put the namespace in here, and then that will get rid of this red underline. Alternatively, I could have done this Unity Engine.ui down here, .ui like that, and that would have worked. So that would still work. I prefer to add my using statements at the top. Okay, now this turn green is still giving me a red squiggly, and it's giving me that because any coroutine wants me to add a yield. So I'm going to add a yield, return new, wait for seconds, and I'm going to wait for v seconds, which is the value that I'm sending in here. This is going to say 3 seconds, and then I'm going to set the color back to red when I'm done waiting. So there we go, red. That's nice. Done. So now what we should see is that when you click on the green object, it'll turn our red object green, and then 3 seconds later it'll turn the red object back to red. So I'm going to go ahead. We don't really need the console for this anymore, but I'm going to leave it on. So you can see the events are still firing off their debug log. So there we go. Object was clicked, object listened and received clicked event, and you can see it turned green and then it went back to red. So that's kind of neat. So you can start to see kind of the power that this provides. It's really giving me the ability to hook in and listen for any kind of event. You know, you can start to think of how you can integrate this into a game. But so I'm going to go ahead and kind of extend this just a little more, just to kind of make this even more interesting and how powerful this is. So I can add more arguments to this. So I'm going to go ahead and add this greater than, less than symbol, and throw the image element in here. Again, it's giving me the red squiggly line. Go ahead and UI. But now you can see, since I added this greater than type and less than, my on-click handler method, when I fire that off, it's giving me an error, and it says there's no argument given that corresponds to required formal parameter. So it wants me to send off an image. So what I can do is I can send in this image, get component, and I can say image, open close, parens, and what's happening is that it's finding the component on this object, and it's sending it off to another object who's listening. So now it's giving me an error here, because this object no longer corresponds to the right parameters. It doesn't have the same signature. So I'm going to go ahead and just update that. So now I'm taking an image in, calling it image, img. And now I'm going to go ahead and send that to my coroutine. And my coroutine is going to give me an error because, well, so calling this coroutine, this IEnumerator method, is going to give me an error because it doesn't take an image. So I'm going to go ahead and just update it so it takes an image now. So now it takes that image. I'm going to go ahead and just set our color, the color of our current image, to img.color. So now what's happening here, it doesn't seem like it's all that big of a deal, but what's happening here is I'm sending in this image. This could be anything. I could attach a data model to the event object, say like you are attacking a bad guy and you want to know what kind of bad guy it is. You could send off the data model that describes what kind of bad guy it is, and that you might be bringing that into your listening object, and looking at that to see how many points that bad guy gives you when you kill him. And you can really build out some robust communication here. But so my example is really simple. It's just bringing in this image component. Again, I'm calling the UI Unity system. So now let's take a look at that real quick and just go over this in action just so you can see the benefit of it. So it's still turning green. That's interesting. But now I can change the color to anything. I'm going to change it to yellow. Boom. So I changed the wrong color. Let that be red. I'm going to select this object. I'm going to make it yellow. Now I'm going to click this object. Now that one's yellow. I'm going to make it blue. Blue. So you can see all of a sudden it's taking on the same color as my target object, which is really interesting. And I don't have to write any extra code to try and make this happen for all sorts of unique objects. I can go ahead and duplicate this object here. Duplicate, duplicate, duplicate. And I can make each one of these a different color, and you'll see like all of a sudden the power here starts to become really apparent. So I've duplicated this one, duplicated that one. I'm giving them separate colors. Let's see, that's green, that's green. Let's make this one a different color too. Let's make it purple. Okay, so we've got all these interesting color swatches here. I mean, you can think beyond games too when you're playing with Unity, although games are really the most interesting part, I think, of developing with Unity. It is a game engine after all. So now I can go ahead and click on this. Now I'm not hooked into that, so I'm only hooked into this guy. See that? So because I'm only hooked into this guy, I'm only taking on this guy's color. But I could turn this into... I could turn this into an array, just like that. And then I could say for int I equals 0, while I is less than clicked object dot length I plus plus. And I'm going to go ahead and move this up here. Instead of clicked object, I'm going to say clicked object I. Set them all equal to that event handler. Okay, so now I should be hooked into every single one of these. And I could just start throwing more and more objects in there. I'm going to go ahead and select that object, lock the inspector, select these objects, and drop them in here. Now, you couldn't see what happened there because I didn't have that expanded, but it basically added all my objects to this array. So I'm going to go ahead and hit play, see if any errors happen here. No. Check the gray one, check the green one, check purple, check the orange. Now we are running into a bit of an error here where we're firing off a coroutine for each one of these, but we're not canceling the previous coroutine. So you'll start getting some weird issues with one coroutine ending and the colors blinking off. So that's easy enough to fix. Every time you do this, you can stop all coroutines. Hit play. So there we go. Let's see that. Boom, 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 boom. Boom, boom. Boom. Okay, so I hope this was an interesting tutorial. I hope you learned a lot. Again, this can be used in so many different ways. It's certainly not about making blocks change colors. I mean, unless you're making a game or some kind of interactive about blocks changing colors, but this is more of a concept that you want to learn and use as you're developing more complicated interactions in your games and your interactives. There's just so much that you can do with this, connecting and having objects communicate through events. So again, there are more ways to connect objects. It's certainly not just through events. Direct references to the objects are required for this to happen, and that there are pros and cons to that. One pro is certainly that you have an easy trail that you can follow when things start to go wrong. So when you need to debug, you've got you've got all these connections. You know which objects are connected, you know where the problems might lie, and it's easy to start investigating the direct connections first. But combining this with a messaging system is really important. I think you can really get extremely robust architectures by using an event system, and even building out a more robust event system with mediators. So that you can have components that are compartmentalized, that don't have to interact with everything, but the mediators connect to everything. Anyways, we can go over some of that stuff in future tutorials, and hopefully as I plan them out in advance, which I'm trying to do with a couple other tutorials, you'll have a more well thought out tutorial that might be more interesting in terms of the content that I'm working with. Okay, have a good one.